Ooh, it's Kevin time.
Oh my god.
All right. Good evening, fellow mortals. You find yourself yet again listening to another episode of the Super Number One Cycling Podcast, the podcast of Campagnola wishes and carbon fiber dreams.
Oh my god, that was so poetic. Especially if you know what that means. That's like, oh dude.
Second tagline, I guess.
I like that. Like that.
And speaking of second taglines, this is our second episode, and I'm glad you're listening to us now and stuck with us this long. So
absolutely.
And speaking of sticking with us this long, and here's where I'm going to have to do my first edit. Because I forgot to pull it out.
It's all right. This is why they invented Pro Tools.
That's right.
Or GarageBand or whatever, or Logic or whatever you want to use.
All right. What did I say? And speaking of what?
Speaking of second taglines or something like that.
I don't remember what I said, but
yeah.
Anyway, I'll edit it right here. We got our very first review, and it's from Speedneater, and it says good start. And that was not a good start to reading his review because it's so far away from me. I can just
say you are very distant.
I am very far. It's these are the problems with my temporary podcasting setup. I have to sit so far away, otherwise you hear from my laptop. Okay. Anyway, back to more important things, like our first review from Speedneater, and it says, "I just listened to the." Didn't we say something, Kevin, about drinking beer and podcasting? I think we did.
We weren't doing that anymore.
That's right. We
At
weren't.
The same time, anyway.
We weren't.
Don't look at my. Yeah.
It's hidden. It's hidden. I just listened to the Super Number One Cycling Podcast. Sounds promising. Well, sounds promising. Yeah, well, we just screwed that one up. Something that I will enjoy listening to. And so thank you for your review. And if you would like to also leave a review that I will butcher. Wow. We're off to a good start.
Say you should have start that one right again and edit that.
Really?
Well, never mind. Go. We'll just roll with it.
We'll roll with it. I think.
Roll with it. Yeah. It's a cycling podcast.
Yeah, we roll. Yeah. So if you'd like to leave us a review, please do on iTunes. We appreciate it, and thank you so much again. So, Kevin, it's been a little while since we recorded, and I'm sure things have been happening, but I would imagine also not that much because, dear God, winter sucks.
We live in Minnesota, and it is the apex. No, it's not the apex. It's the navel of the polar vortex, really. I mean,
it really is.
We are the uterus of it right here. I mean, this is where it births cold, and there's a lot of. I don't know. I mean, there has been definitely a lot of epic biking adventures that have been happening in the state and out of the state from Minnesota people, and likewise, there's a lot of fat bike races and stuff going on right now. But man, I mean, people, you have to be hardy to be biking in these temperatures. I mean, it is negative something consistently right now. Today, the high degree right here in Rochester, Minnesota was -2. And I'm like, that's pretty great. And I went out and rode for an hour. And I came back home, and my legs were literally I may have frostbitten myself. I may have done it. I don't know. And so I got in the shower, took a shower, and warmed up and some. And I laid under a blanket for a little bit, and my legs were just burning. And not from muscle burning, but just from
your capillaries are screaming.
Yeah, heat. Oh, heat feels great. Wow, burning. And I was like, wow, that's a great feeling. And it literally made me almost fall asleep because I was just like, oh. Only an hour of riding, and I was like, oh, I'm ready to take a nap. So there's the problem with winter riding, I guess, is that it makes you feel like, oh, an hour is a long time.
Right.
No, it's not at all. But
yeah, I've really been my Viking heritage and ancestors are probably like turning over in their shallow graves right now. But
it's mounds. They
mounds,
buried
yes,
mounds,
burial
yes.
mounds, yes. But I'm really quite tired of it, and I will
Yeah.
say that I have persevered. Many months ago, I set a goal of doing a century every single month, and I thought January was hard to do because it was, but February, holy cow. It's hard.
Did you get it done?
It's hard to stop yourself from swearing in the middle of swearing.
Yeah. Did you get it done?
I did get it done. Yeah, it took.
Wow.
So I did. Yeah, my century ride for February a couple weeks ago, and morale for me was low in doing it. And I started out the day thinking, I don't know if I'm gonna do it. I'll at least try. And so I went out with a friend.
I'll go out and do a metric. There you go.
Yeah, exactly. So I went out with a friend, and she and I started the day out at, I think it was like -4, -5.
Ugh.
And I was riding my mountain bike, which I've been sort of using as my commuter bike during this winter, mainly for the fact that, A, wide tires, so that's helpful, and B,
don't care about it as much.
Don't care about it as much, and man, winter has taken its toll on it. It has, things have stopped working. For example, the shifters just gummed up completely, and the brakes barely work because the cables have corroded. Those sorts of things. And
cleaned your bike, Andrew.
Well, I mean, it's a matter of cleaning the bike, but also like the brake cables, turns out, aren't stainless steel, which is strange. The other cables are, but so I need to fix that.
Yeah.
And so when we started our day, it was damn cold, and we rode for an hour, and then met up with a couple other friends, including her dad, and thawed ourselves. But the cute part about that day was that my freewheel was freezing.
Oh, wonderful.
And so it's like, extra degree of freedom there, just not the kind you want. And so stopped at a local bike shop, and they were kind enough to shower my bike off and warm it up and, apply some lube and stuff. And I thought it was, fixed, but as soon as the bike got back outside and cooled off again, all of a sudden it started going away again. Yep. But, fortunately, the day warmed up a bit, and once it hit about 5 degrees in the plus direction, then my problem went away. So
there's a very fine degree in grease. I mean,
yeah,
it really
yeah.
is.
And it is kind of interesting how, these subtle things will affect the performance of something as simple, quote unquote simple as a bike.
I will tell you, with my new fat bike that I just got, which we'll talk about later, but I actually had to take the entire hub system apart and re-grease it because the grease that they sent it with was this really sticky, apparently for tropical conditions grease or something. So I wiped all that off and actually applied some like really nice Park Tools polylube in there, and now it's golden, even in negative degrees. So I mean, because it was to the point where I would actually take the bike and I would go out and it would be like, let's say -5 or something, and I would just run it on the ground, the front wheel, just like take the handlebars in my hands and just run it on the ground and then like lift it up and see how long it would spin. It would maybe get 1.5 revolutions and stop. Wow. And I'm like, okay, I know for a fact that's not brake rub because I've spent hours working on brakes.
Right.
There's something else going on. So I took it home and I looked at the grease system in there and like, yeah, that is the problem right there. So there's something to be said for cold weather conditions and grease.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, the people at the bike shop are like, if you bring this in before the roadies start bringing all their bikes in to get tuned up, we can grease it for you. Put some lower temperature grease in there for $25.
Yeah,
deal.
No problem. Yeah.
I, of course, haven't done that because just I've been traveling for work and that sort of stuff. And I actually should go have it greased because as soon as I do, spring will start. And maybe I should do that for everyone.
You should. You absolutely should. Take the hit for us, Andrew, please.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I'm ready for spring. I totally am.
So am ready.
I am ready.
And So the only other thing I have to say, I guess, about my last century was that, well, one, it took me all day, mainly because of the cold and that sort of stuff, and I broke it up with other things like lunch and hockey game and dinner. It took all day. But one of my hesitations too was that after doing the tour of Sufferlandria and a week before that, my January century, I started for the first time ever to develop a knee issue, which frankly has scared the crap out of me because, I've ridden for, 8 years, but with intensity, really for the last, 9 months or something like that.
Sure.
Zero problems for the most part, except for on like long rides, maybe then your Achilles will be a little tight afterwards.
Yeah.
That sort of stuff. Whereas this thing during the tour of Sufferlandria was just kind of plaguing me the entire time. And so I've given it a little bit of rest. I had this work trip for the last week, which, oh my gosh, San Francisco, 60-degree weather, and they don't have potholes there. Like, we were up in wine country in Napa and Sonoma and stuff, the most pristine roads I have ever seen. And, the temperature was perfect, and I didn't have a bike. And it made me
naturally.
sad.
That's how it goes.
But so I figured, this week off, it'll be a good time to rest my knee. And the other thing I did is I started doing physical therapy for it, even though it's not necessarily true that I need it because maybe my problem's already gone, but I figured why not take advantage of my health insurance and, prevent this from turning into something horrible like tendinitis. So it's been interesting because I've only been, for one day, but one of the cool parts is that in addition to the PT guy giving me a few exercises to do, things with bands around your legs and walking up steps and single leg crouches and that kind of stuff. The cool thing is that next week when I go see him, he said, bring my bike in. And he's going to,
nice.
Basically do a bike fit that gets paid by insurance. So,
that's fantastic. Oh my God.
Which, is a legitimate use of insurance because we're doing injury prevention here. But
absolutely, yeah.
So I'm looking forward to seeing what he does because for now I'm gonna, my brand new bike. They did a bike fit at the store, and I really haven't ridden it enough to know if it's what the fit is other than the time that you and I rode that century. But for my trainer bike, that's never been looked at by anyone other than me. And it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that. So I guess we'll talk about that.
It's very interesting because I've noticed how my bike fit has completely changed with my winter bike as to my other stuff, but just because I wear bigger shoes, thicker insoles, that sort of thing. Like everything shifts.
Absolutely.
Because I've been actually having a lot of right knee pain as well, and I know that it's like, well, I know why this is. It's because my bike fit for right now is not ideal. It's winter fit, and I'll just deal with it because in a month I'll be changing it again.
Well, and that's exactly it. It's like I know with my mountain bike, when I did that last ride, I was trying to sort of ride through the pain. Which wasn't too big a deal, but it's sore. And I noticed that right away if I lifted my seat up a little bit, because of course I'm wearing boots and not clipping
all
in,
of a sudden it's like, oh, it's gone.
Made a bit of a difference, right? Yeah. But with the other bike, like the trainer bike, I hadn't touched that seat post in over a year almost, probably, or maybe not quite that long, but not nothing recent would have changed the way I have been riding. So I suspect that it was a combination of doing a century and then killing myself on a fitness test that just kind of blew me up. And I also wonder,
and also like developing certain muscles over other muscles, and
that. And this is probably apocryphal, but I kind of wonder if doing yoga has sort of changed sort of my biomechanics a little bit, such that the way I used to ride now
you're
is
more
not
flexible
the same.
now.
Yeah, and more flexible, and also just my riding intensity has not gone down a ton, but it's gone down by at least a factor of 2. So
sure.
So that's probably all of these things are pieces of the puzzle. So
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So if you have the opportunity and you're hurting, probably get it checked out before it's too late.
Absolutely. I guarantee, like somewhere around, I don't know, May, June, we'll start talking about injury prevention, because that's when, after Alonso, after a lot of my big races start, that's where I'll be like, okay, now I need to start being careful. Especially going into almost all of my races this year that I am planning on doing are happening in September to October.
Right.
So that's where I'm really having to be careful. But there'll still be a lot of big rides in the summer. But yeah. Anyway, Andrew, I just can't wait any longer. We
Are we going
to
talk about your Voluminous Velocipede?
Exactly.
Excellent.
We need to talk about my fat bike. Okay, it is the fattest.
I can't believe we made it this far into the show without it happening. So.
Well, I've had some time now to get used to it being in my life. I just want to say this out front, okay, before anything else. My fat bike is my favorite bike. It is probably the only bike, or not, I shouldn't say the only bike, but it will be probably the bike that I ride the most for the rest of the year, because it is so fun. Now, I want to say a couple of things to people. If you haven't ridden a fat bike, okay, first of all, go out of your way, find a local bike shop that is doing like a demo or something for it, and just ride one for like a half an hour. They give you the demos to try it, and they're super fun. I mean, that's the thing. It's hello, Wolfie. But yeah, it's the fat bike. The reason that I love it so much, okay, is one, it makes me feel like a kid again riding a bike. Two, it's a totally different style. I mean, you ride this bike and you're just like you have no choice but to take the time and enjoy what you're doing.
Right.
And I should say this also. A fat bike is not a fast bike, so do not get that in your head.
They took that S out for a reason.
Exactly. Like, do not get this in your head. Like, I'm going to get a fat bike and I'm going to be competitive with other people who are riding mountain bikes. And no, you're not. No, just that's not going to happen. Just unless you're like a superhuman, it's not going to happen. Okay, like my average speed. If I pump up the tires to, like, let's say, absurdly high for a fat bike, like I actually had these guys up to 18 pounds. Okay. Now for a fat bike, that's absurdly high. Okay. These tires that are on here, which we'll talk about a little bit later, are the V missions, and they'll go up to 20 on the bead, or it's what they say on the sidewall. So I put them up to 18, and I rode with it for a little bit on just tar, and I hated it. I absolutely despised it because it feels rigid and hard and awful, and I didn't like it. Right. But I could actually get like a 16-mile-an-hour average, no problem. Like it handled like a mountain bike at that point. At the same time, it didn't feel like a fat bike. Didn't like it. So that's what I'll say about speed. Okay, fat bike, not fast bike. It's different. Different style. That's what you get. But I think what I really wanted to talk to you about this bike in particular, though, is that this is one of the very first bikes that has been offered to the biking populace that is actually I hesitate to call it a budget fat bike.
Sure.
But it actually is a very affordable fat bike for most people. The average fat bike cost in today's market, anyway, I would say is about $1,600 to $2,000. And that is like looking at like a Surly Pugsley up to a Salsa Muckluck. If you're going to like a 907 or a Borealis or something like that, you're going beyond $2,000.
Right.
To get something decent.
Right.
Then
you have the absurd Bear Grease.
No, the Bear Grease is awesome. I mean, if you've ever ridden the Bear Grease, oh my God. I mean, that bike is awesome. I was like ready to swear, but oh man, it's so good.
It's fun to see ourselves tethered, tie ourselves in knots to not swear.
Right, but it's. I mean, I remember when I first went into the store and picked up a Bear Grease, like just went next to it and picked it up. I'm like, you got to be kidding! This thing is lighter than my 29er. I mean, this thing's like absurdly light. But anyway. So that's the problem with fat bikes, is that there's a large investment of dollar to get into it. This is always the thing that has kept me from getting into it. I've wanted to fat bike for probably, I don't know, a year and a half or more. the first time I saw a fat bike, I'm like, I want one of those,
Mm-hmm.
because they look cool and they look like it looks like something that reflects my personality, and I just really wanted to get it.
It goes with that battle axe biking that you like to do.
Exactly, it goes with like, the big fat guy who wants to like, like just pound things, like that's awesome. But so the fat bike thing just always appealed to me. So I had ridden Pugsleys that a couple of my friends had. Loved the Pugsley. I'd ridden a couple of Mucklucks at different demos. I'd ridden a Bear Grease. The Bear Grease is so stupid. The reason I say it's stupid is because it's so light. It's dumb. But anyway, I've ridden a lot of different fat bikes. So eventually it came around, though, that this company called Framed that's out of Minnesota, was putting together this fat bike, and it was called the Minnesota 2.0, which automatically caught my attention because I'm like, oh, it's called the state I like? Great, but yeah, so they have a Minnesota 2.0 and a Minnesota 1.0, and the big difference between the two is whether it has a double chain ring in the front or not. That's the biggest difference.
So the 2 has the double chain ring?
Yes.
Okay.
There's a couple different geometry things different, but it's not really that important. So the second I saw this bike come on the market, I'm like, that is probably the bike for me, because it was $600 cheaper than a Pugsley. And in fat bike world, that's wow, amazing. And also it came with a second set of wheels. There was a 29er set of wheels for free. I'm like, okay, that's hard to beat. So through a lot of finagling and whatnot happened with the wife and stuff like that, I ended up getting it. Okay. So because as we all know, how many bikes should you own? N+1. That's
Absolutely.
correct. Yeah. So I already had 2. Now I have my 3rd. And actually my harem is pretty much complete now, because I have my road/cross bike, I have my single speed mountain bike, and now I have my fat bike /29er geared. So I'm pretty good. Anyway, so let's talk about this bike. Okay, besides the price getting into this for an aluminum framed fat bike at roughly about $1,000, it's hard to beat that.
Right.
You can go all the way down to like the Wall Goose, the Walmart Mongoose fat bike, which is like $200 or something like that. Which, yeah, if you want to ride your fat bike around town and do nothing else but ride around town, it's great. I mean, I know people have had it, and I've seen it around, and they have a ton of fun on it. Yeah, but it is not a serious bike. Don't kid yourself. It is not a serious bike by any way, shape, or form. Same thing, like you go up to the Bikes Direct has a lot of Motobekan fat bikes now, and those things are actually pretty great, because I've seen a couple of those around town as well, and they're really great. I think they're wonderful. But I'm thoroughly convinced that this bike that I happen to get is the best value for your money, and we will be talking about why that is. So first and foremost, I would like to say about this bike is that I was immediately drawn in by its color. Maybe that's just me because I am a sucker for orange. It could be, I don't know. But I really like the color scheme of this one. The one that I got is a white frame with orange rims, and it looks great. And if you go to www.framedbikes.com and go to their fat bike page, you can see all their different colors that they have for their fat bikes. I got the white with orange, and I just think it looks striking and wonderful. Here's the thing. I actually want to divide this review up into about 3 different sections if I can, Andrew. And the first part I want to talk about is actually the frame. Okay, so I did a lot of research about this frame, and actually it's very, very similar to a Pugsley as far as the dimensions of the geometry. The biggest difference is actually the top tube length is actually a little bit shorter than a Pugsley. So you will notice when you get on this bike, it feels like you're very much on top of the front wheel. So it's a very
in terms of like the Surly landscape, though, sort of step me through what they've got there, because is Pugsley sort of that's kind of their entry level one, right?
Well, the Pugsley is, I would say, the quintessential fat bike.
Okay.
Regardless of where you heard of fat biking or anything like that, Pugsley was probably their first.
Right.
It is very much a do it all, see it all. This is the bike that is going to change your life. Fat bike.
Sure.
Fabulous bike. I know a lot of people have Pugsleys, and nobody has ever told me like, oh God, I don't like my Pugsley. It's always like, oh, my Pugsley is the best thing I've ever had.
Right.
So I was very critical when I looked at the geometry differences between the framed bike and the Pugsley, because I was honestly looking at a Pugsley, and the differences there are differences, absolutely, but they're pretty minimal, like 1 or 2 centimeters is about the differences in the geometry of the frames, and that kind of made me go, okay, I can discount that. But then I started hearing a lot of reviews from the very preliminary reviews when the framed bike came out, like saying like this is a very aggressive style geometry, like you feel like you're on top of the front wheel.
Sure.
And I can say from riding it, that's very true.
Sure. So it's not a touring bike, because it's not one of those things you kind of sit back on and go. It's a much more mountain bikey,
absolutely,
carve and turns kind of bike.
Absolutely.
Carve turns on a bike necessarily, but in the winter, I guess you do.
It definitely feels much more mountain bikey than touring.
Okay, sure.
You're not going to be leaning back on, which is kind of counterintuitive, because you almost want to be back on the back wheel while you're riding in the winter to get more traction.
Right.
But you do feel like your weight is either very centered on both wheels or more towards the front. And I would actually say that is a check mark against this bike, especially for winter. I think in 3 other seasons, you're not going to have any difficulty with that at all. At all. But in the winter, you do want more weight in the rear just to get traction. So that is one thing I have with the geometry that I'm not a big fan of. The thing I have with the geometry is that since it is putting all of your weight on your front wheel, it is putting a lot of weight on your handlebars. And I have found that the grips on there and also the handlebar angle, which I believe on here is a 12-degree bend in the bar, for me, and I think I have a relatively neutral ape index, which is your like length of arm to torso.
More chimp than ape.
Right. I'm pretty much equal on there, but the thing is, I still end up leaning a lot on my hands, and I end up with a lot of like having to move my hands around a lot because my hands are going numb.
Sure.
So could that be corrected with handlebar things like that? Sure. I don't know exactly yet, because also as we talked about just briefly earlier, the fit for this bike right now is with shoes that I don't normally wear. It's with flat pedals, not my clip-ins, or clipless, excuse me. It's a lot of things are variable, and they change all the time.
Right. And
so I'm not willing to say like, oh, this geometry is totally wrong. I'm actually more to say like, okay, I don't like it right now. I don't even say I don't like it, but it's not comfortable right now.
Sure. Well, especially too for I suspect that winter riding just isn't comfortable in general.
This ends up being more though where my hands are having a numbness.
Okay.
And not necessarily like there's not any cold or anything like that's happening. It's a like I have to move my hands around a lot just to get feeling back in my middle fingers or something like that.
Right. Maybe you need to come do some yoga with me. I don't know.
Maybe I could do it. Other than that, as far as the geometry goes, what I really liked seeing on this bike was especially like if you look at a Surly Pugsley, you'll see how those things are like overbuilt to the, and it's also a steel frame.
Sure.
But those things are overbuilt to the point like they're indestructible. The thing that I liked about this frame is that it's aluminum, which I like as a winter bike. Far more rust resistant. You're not going to have any problems with that, provided you take even a little bit of care of it.
Right.
You know. And then also, if you will look at the picture of the bike, you'll notice that the top tube to the I'm forgetting the term now, but chainstay angle, there's actually a little bit between the seat tube and the top tube where there's like a slight offset.
Mm-hmm.
I like that because to me that's actually like looks a little more stable to me. Like if you look at a Surly bike, they actually have a separate tube that goes between the seat tube and the top tube just to stabilize those things.
Sure.
And this kind of like does that with less material, I guess. I don't know. But this is just what I look at. I have no data to point this out yet. But I just looked at that and I go, okay, that makes sense to me from a physics standpoint. The frame is made out of a 6061 alloy aluminum, which honestly is just as good as any aluminum you're going to get on a $5,000 bike if it's aluminum.
Right.
It's 6061 to 6060, 6063 aluminum. The differences are so minor.
Well, and for a bike like this too, it's just it seems sort of a
if you're in aluminum,
to worry about it.
Yeah, like if you're in aluminum, you're in aluminum. If you're in steel, you're in steel. If you're in carbon, you're in carbon. You know, I mean, that's kind of the way I look at it. Like if you're gonna break something, if you're gonna break an aluminum frame, I guarantee you would break the 6061 or the 6063. You're gonna break it. It's the same thing. It's like the stress levels that they talk about are pretty much like tension strength.
Mm-hmm.
And it really, you hardly ever put that kind of tension on a bike, and I don't know. Look at the Wikipedia over the aluminum stuff because I actually did look it up, and you look at like the tension differences, and it's like there's a couple pounds here and there, but it's in stuff that you never do on a bike.
Right.
So, there you go. The other thing with the frame, I would say also, is the sizing. So the Minnesota 2.0 comes in 3 different sizes. It comes in a 16-inch, 18-inch, and a 20-inch. Now, I got the smallest size because I'm a short dude. I'm about 5'7", 5'7.5", something like that. And when I am standing on top of this thing, the standover height, like that top tube is right next to my other tube. So, I mean, it's right there. It's pretty tight. So just keep that in mind. Like, if you're thinking like if you're like a 5'6" to, I would even say 5'9" kind of person, 16 inches is great. It's great.
And so this is the 16 inches. The what? That's the seat tube length.
The 16 inch is the bottom bracket to
okay.
top.
Okay, sure.
But it's very. Like I would say that size is definitely good. The problem is that the cockpit size ends up being a little bit cramped for that, but that's something you can adjust your seat.
So what's the for your the 2.0 has the 2 chain rings. What's the big chain ring?
Okay, so this is where we're getting into my second part of the thing. So we have frame, and then I have function. Okay, so the function part of this is how are all the components working together. So as far as the drivetrain goes in this, you got a really badass drivetrain on this. You got SRAM X5 X7 drivetrain, which is really great. I mean, it is high quality, top notch, really smooth shifting. Like when you shift down on this thing, like you're going in your cassette and you're shifting into a higher gear, like it is right there. Once you get it, obviously you're getting this shipped to you, so you have to do a little bit of adjustment.
Sure.
But once you get it adjusted, like it is bam right there. And the like shifting down into an easier gear, you can shift 4 gears at a time on this fucker. Sorry. Oh my god. Sorry, Andrew, I made you edit.
That's okay. I'll just put a little like bike porn over it or something.
Yeah, okay. But start again.
The spirit, got you.
Yeah, it did. It really did because it excites me. So, so starting again.
No, you don't need to. We'll just roll through it.
No, so you can shift 4 gears down in this thing at a time, and it is absolutely amazing because when you're on snow, especially, to get that kind of like, oh, I need more, spinning, like you can get down there quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Just fantastic. And it's just seamless. It's wonderful. But on the front side, you have a 28 tooth for a small and a 38 for a big.
Okay.
Which is weird.
Mm-hmm. What did you say the big or the small cog was in the back?
In the back, okay. In the back, you go all the way down to 12 to 36.
Okay.
In the front, you're getting 28 to 38.
Okay.
That's weird. For most fat bikes, you're getting 22 to 36. That's the normal.
Mm-hmm.
Now you go, well, why would this be different? Well, it's because they're shipping those 29er wheels with it.
Sure.
They want to give you a bike that's going to be as versatile as possible all 4 seasons of the year. So can you ride in snow with 28, 38? Yeah, absolutely. No problem. I mean, are you going to be doing as well in deep snow as people at 22? No. You're going to be working a lot harder. But that's something to keep in mind. This is a nice, SRAM drivetrain. You can change out these gears if you need to. It's not an issue.
Mm-hmm.
Buy a 22 chainring, no problem.
Right.
Easy. Buy a 2236 for the winter, change it back out to 38, 28 for summer or whatever you're going to do. No problem. Right now, I mean, I've been riding on snowmobile trails and different snow conditions in the area here, and I haven't felt the need that I've needed more than the 28-36 ratio. There's maybe been a couple times where I've been like, boy, I'm going up this steep snow-covered hill, and I'd be like, boy, it'd be nice to have a couple more teeth here.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, at that point, I'd be like, I'd probably be getting off the bike and walking anyway.
Sure.
So
and just being able to maintain your traction on something that's not super hard pack is probably gonna be kind of tough.
Exactly.
So
the other thing about this bike that I really, really appreciate is the brake system on it. Now this comes with Avids. I think it's the Avid BB7s, and I just want to make sure that's BB7s. Hang on one second here. BB5s, excuse me. Okay, so it has the Avid BB5s, and my 29er came with Tektro disc brakes. And so it gave me this nice comparison of like what's the big difference between Avid and Tektros. Now, the Avids are a lot nicer. I'll say this right now, as far as like setting them up to getting the exact type of braking that you want on a disc brake.
Sure.
I like my disc brakes to be touch the brake levers and I start getting some braking. I don't want to squeeze them. I want to have a little bit, like I should never have to pull my brake levers farther than, let's see, if halfway would be all the way to like as far as they will go, I don't want to push them like more than 3/4.
Right.
I like to have like pretty accurate braking, or pretty sensitive braking, I should say. And these are allowing me to do that really well because they have these great caliper adjustments on the brake that allow me to get the stationary brake pad like really close to the rotor.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like that. And on the Tektros, that same thing is there, but it's not nearly as accurate. So I like these Avids a lot better. They feel more responsive. I'm getting really good braking out of it and no brake noise. If you have disc brakes, they make noise.
Or if you've ridden with people who have disc brakes, God, they make noise.
Or you have people who have disc brakes and then don't take care of them or don't care about them or just like, disc brakes make noise. They don't have to make noise. If you take the time like I do and all anal about it, like they don't make any noise. Like my brakes make no noise at all. Because I am stupid about it, and like I sit down in my basement and like sit there for like an hour working on one brake to get it absolutely perfect, and then the second I take that wheel off, I have to do it all over again.
Right.
But I don't care. I don't like hearing noise on my bike. But these Avids are way more easy to set up than the Tektros were. So I would say like I'm a big proponent of these Avid brakes. Their whole system of the stationary pad versus the motion pad is much more reliable than the Tektros. I really like it a lot. The saddle that comes in this thing, by the way, I wasn't a big fan of it. It comes with a Velo Plush saddle, which I thought I was going to like more than my WTB.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't. It was actually like too rigid. And maybe that's just for like ice biking. on snow where it's a lot of bumps and stuff.
Sure.
Maybe I will change it back. But right now, I went with my WTB Speed V saddle, and I liked it better. This bike also comes with some really great pedals, which is weird for a bike to come with pedals.
Mm-hmm.
But it came with some really nice platform pedals, which I had no problem with. But here we get to the biggest part of fat biking right now, and this is my tire review. What's the biggest part of fat biking? Well, it's the wheels, the tires.
Quite clearly, it kind of defines it.
Right. So let's talk about these tires. Okay. So what comes with the frame bike is the V rubber missions. Okay. So what they are is they're a 26x4 fat bike tire. Now, V Rubber is a company that has been making tires for everybody forever.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you have Kendas or you have V Rubber is the people that make them. So they know something about making tires. They just decided like, hey, we'll just make our own brand now too. The nice thing about these tires is that they're so inexpensive for fat bike tires. I mean, honestly, if you look at a fat bike, a large part of the money is the tires. I mean, they're usually like $100 a tire. I mean, they're expensive. They really are. So you get these tires that are these missions, and they're like about $50-$60 a tire. And you're like, oh wow, that's pretty great. Well, there's a reason for that. Okay. Here's the reason for that. Will these V missions be awesome 3 seasons of the year? Absolutely. Like I will guarantee that the missions will dominate on gravel. They will be excellent on single track. They will just be wonderful because they roll fast. They're great. You get them into snow, and they're iffy, very iffy. Their off-camber traction is really there's a lot of sliding. The other thing is that when you run the V missions on lower pressure, there's a lot of self-steering in the front wheel, which I don't know if you've ever experienced on a bike before, but like a lot of people say like, oh, self-steering, well, that's great. You'll just steer itself straight. No. It wants to go like left or right.
Steers you sideways.
Like, where am I going? No. It's like work to keep it going straight.
Right.
So like when you're running these things down on snow pressures, like 8 PSI and lower, and then run into some hard pack, that's where you get into self-steering issues. And it's like, okay, I don't like you so much. So next year, I will totally be switching these tires out for winter. Missions are not a winter tire. I will absolutely say that without a doubt. Unless you put like studs on them or something. That's just stupid. But I will probably go with like some 45 North Husker Do's or maybe some Surly Nates or something like that. Just that has more grip and more reliable traction on snow. These guys don't have it. When I had them up at a higher pressure and riding on like pavement or gravel, they were great. Absolutely great. Like this is I will gladly ride this tire in the Almanzo or whatever long ride I do at a higher pressure and have no problem with them. Would I ride a long distance with these at a low pressure? I don't know. I think I'd end up spending a lot of energy fighting the tire.
Sure.
And that ends up being a problem.
Right.
So to sum up my whole fat biking thing here with this fat bike, I have to say this, okay? The framed Minnesota 2.0 fat bike, scale 1 out of 10, absolutely a solid 8. Absolutely. I don't think you can beat the value for the money if you want to get I hate to say this, but a entry-level fat bike. I mean, this is the bike that is going to get you into fat biking at a professional level without spending a lot of that professional money until you're like really serious about it.
Right.
Obviously, there's going to be a huge difference between this bike, which weighs like 32 to 35 pounds, depending on the frame size you get, to a Bear Grease, which weighs like $110.
Right.
Like it weighs nothing. I mean, you pretty much lift it up with like one finger. I mean, that's It's the same thing with like a steel frame road bike to a carbon bike. It's a world of difference, but there's a world of difference in money there, and you have to be serious about what you're getting.
Absolutely, yeah. You have to be really committed to it. It's not. I mean, for me, something like a fat bike is. I've got at least one more bike, and actually not even really a bike, probably a power meter, a wheel set, then a cross bike, then a fat bike. And so for me, having that kind of progression and that sort of I forgot to put a house in front of all of those things so I can house these bikes. But for me, that's sort of an extra bike and not a primary bike. And so for something like that, I'm looking at anywhere from $800 to $1,200 for something like a fat bike.
Well, it's like you're looking at the fat bike as a quiver bike.
Exactly. Right.
I look at the fat bike as like this is actually probably going to be my second inline bike.
Right.
If not my first inline bike, depending on the ride I'm doing. Like if I'm riding
too, yeah.
Well, if I'm riding with friends, like we're going to do a casual ride around, I'm going to take my fat bike.
Sure.
Absolutely. If we're going to hey, we're going to go ride 150 miles at a 17 mile an hour speed. No, I'm not taking the fat bike. I'm not doing that.
That'd be fun to see someone try though.
Oh, they would be sweating like a pig, and they'd be looking like a pig on it too. They're like trying to keep up. But I mean, it's totally there was a quote on fatbike.com the other day where they were talking about hey, if you rode a fat bike around a parking lot for like 10 minutes, that's great. I'm glad you tried it out, but you really need to take it out for like an hour.
Sure.
To get the oh, now I see why I want this.
Right, right.
And I totally agree with that. I never had that experience. I had it the second I rode one for 30 seconds. I'm like, oh, this is what I want. And I still have that feeling every time I get on the bike. It's a pure joy of getting on a fat bike, and it appeals to some folks and some it doesn't. But at the same time, I have a total joy when I get on my road bike too, and
sure.
All of a sudden, oh my God, this is fast.
Yeah, right.
I'm itching for that right now, honestly. Except for all the ice on the roads, I can't ride my road bike at all.
Well, the way the roads are right now, you can't even ride a fat bike. I mean.
Oh, I can ride my fat bike, but I have to get on the snowmobile trail.
Yeah, up in the city here, it's insane. I mean.
Oh, it's crazy down here.
The too. quote unquote plowed roads are it's like a Zamboni went over them. It's crazy.
Yeah, exactly. It's all ice. Yeah, same here.
Crazy.
Yep, it's all ice. But I would just say this to sum up the whole fat bike thing as far as the framed goes. 8 out of 10, solid. Let's just say they took that 29er wheel set out of there. Would it still be worth $1,000? Absolutely.
Well, and that was only an introductory offer, wasn't it?
I think they're still offering it right now. I'm not entirely sure. Don't quote me on that. But I mean, I have my 29er wheel set down in the basement. Mm-hmm. I actually took the slicks that I ordered with it off and put them on my single speed because I'm like, that makes more sense there.
Sure.
And put my mountain bike tires on the set that they gave me with it. And are they decent wheels? Yeah, they're fine. Mm-hmm. Will I ever switch them out? Yeah, I'm sure I will, just to check it out at some point in time.
Yeah, that's the thing to me is that, hey, free wheels, that's nice and all, but I just can't see, why you'd swap them out,
Well, that's why I have another bike.
Well, right, exactly. That's why you have a different bike. That's, completely different.
Exactly.
Handling and riding, etc. So.
But for me, it did make sense because I have a road bike, cross bike, whatever you want to call it. I have my single speed 29er. But now I also have a 29er geared and a fat bike.
Right.
So if we were doing a ride where I'm like, I really don't want to ride the fat, but I don't want to be single speed. Okay, I can ride 29er with gears. Okay, great.
Right.
Fantastic. So, I mean, it has a function for me, which is why I went with it. But yeah, the wheels came with it. They're nice wheels. I wouldn't say that they're no, these are the greatest racing wheels you're getting. No, they're not that. They're free wheels. But they're free wheels. So take what you can get, man.
Right. Hold on one sec. We're still got crap Skype right now, so
okay.
Let's give it a sec. Say something.
Hello.
I think it's better.
Okay.
Yeah, carry on.
But what I would say is, just to sum this whole thing up, is that if you're looking to getting into the fat bike craze, I hate to call it that. Some people think it's a fad or what.
Well,
no, it's here.
I mean, let me just comment on that too, because I, very much thought that when I first saw fat bikes, and because my first experience actually seeing one on the road was really, kind of probably at Inspiration 100, and to me, it was kind of absurd,
Well, they're comical. They are when you first see it.
It's comical, but also just it's sort of like going to a boxing match and tying a one arm behind your back. Like you could, sure, but why would you? And so they didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And the thing that changed my mind really was my first season of true winter biking, biking in the snow with a mountain bike, which has been a lot of fun, but I'm sort of limited in the kind of conditions I can ride. And so the thing that really made me wake up and go, whoa, okay, I see where a fat bike shines is, I was at my parents' house and I was out riding my bike on the river, and there was, maybe, 4 inches of snow. Some of it was, nice boilerplate kind of windblown stuff, but some of it was deep. And so I was really fighting to float on it, but it was a lot of fun. Just, I mean, this you've got this open river, frozen river, and I could just ride wherever I want. There was nothing getting in my way, and I could just go. And the most you're gonna hit is a little drift or an ice ridge, and that was a lot of fun. I'm like, okay, this scenario is where I really understand where a fat bike is gonna shine,
and that is where they do shine. Like today, I was riding for about an hour, and I did some on the snowmobile trails, but also we've had a lot of these windblown drifts that have come over some of the trails, and they're relatively large. Like some of them are about like 2 feet tall of really hard packed fine drift, and I mean you could treat that thing just like a pump track.
Yeah, right.
And that is so fun.
Right.
I mean, and that is where like fat bikes just shine, is where you're getting on conditions that your normal bike would flounder and fail, and like your fat bike gets on there and goes, I don't care, let's go. And that is the, like, are we going fast? No, but we're still going.
Right.
That's right. We didn't fall over. We're not, like, it's great. So it's just a different style, and I think
absolutely. Yeah,
that's the hardest thing to get used to, especially if you're used to like a road bike or a fast mountain bike type of thing, is that the pace is so much slower.
Yeah, and I think if you do any sort of winter riding, you're able to wrap your head around that, because you quickly realize it's impossible to go fast.
Well, you can go fast, but it ends up being more about like how long have I been out here, and less about how many miles have I gone.
Exactly.
And
and how hard have I been working?
Exactly. Like, am I drenched with sweat and now freezing cold and gone 2 miles, or have I gone 2 miles and been like, it took a little longer, but I'm comfortable. So that's kind of the beauty.
I still think they're a bit of a midlife crisis bike, though.
I've heard that, but at the same time, I've seen so many people riding them on single track, like in the middle of the summer.
Absolutely.
And I have never ridden I'm totally just waiting for dry single track conditions so I can go ride it single track, and I guarantee I'll be coming back on the show and going like, you won't believe what I did. Like, remember like last year when I was on the 28 iron, I'm like, oh, there's all these pedal strikes and terrible things. Like this time I just rode over the stuff. Like that'll be great. So yeah, that's what's gonna happen. And as far as midlife crisis bike, I love that title, but at the same time, I go, you know what? Just wait until you're my age.
Well, I'm not saying you bought it as a midlife crisis. I guess, I mean, you could say that sort of about, a road bike, a fancy road bike could be a midlife crisis bike. But the reason I say that is that when I'm out riding, and, granted, when I'm out riding my mountain bike in winter conditions, I'm not going on to the like out here we have the river bottoms, the mountain bike trails. I'm usually using it as my substitute road bike. And so I'm either commuting with it or I'm going on bike paths. And so I see a lot of, guys out there, probably in their 50s or something like that on their fat bike riding on the groomed trails. And the times where I've been on the, quote unquote trail, but they haven't been groomed, not a fat bike in sight. So I always found that funny. I mean, so I went on I think this is maybe one of my centuries, and I was out there doing a riding on non-groomed stuff, and all I saw, I saw road bike tracks, mountain bike tracks, and cross tracks. Not a single fat bike track. And I'd get to the groomed sections, there'd be a guy on a fat bike, guy in his bear grease. Maybe he was riding to the, like frozen rivers and the deep woods, maybe, but a lot of people.
Well, as to be said, like, just to say, like, Christopher Tasova, who placed 7th in the Arrowhead 135, he did it on his Mukluk 3. There are people on their bear greases who are way behind him. Mm-hmm. So let's just say that. Bear grease, wonderful bike, fantastic bike. Can't wait to ride one again.
But it doesn't.
But at the same time, does not make you a faster biker. No.
Right.
So here, but speaking of like bear greases and like new bikes and stuff like that, Andrew, what just happened recently was Frostbike. Here in Minneapolis, and Frostbike is a pretty big deal because that is the QBP kind of big product trade show that happens here in Minneapolis, St. Paul area. QBP, just in case you don't know, is Quality Bike Products, and they own, I don't know if they're the parent company of many different bike products.
Pretty much all of them. It seems.
Just about. Not Shimano anymore, but we'll talk about that just here in a second. So, I mean, but like, Surly, Salsa, 45 North, Whiskey Parts, Foundry, All City, like, it just keep going.
Right. If the name's not Italian.
It's probably QBP.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah. At the same time, though, I have a really hard time ever hating them as like a conglomerate, because if you ever go to their webpage and like look at what they do and like look at the stuff they give their employees just for commuting to work on bike, and I'm like, God, I want to work for you. I mean, they give them credits to like get new bikes because they commute to work. And I'm like, that's fantastic. But anyway, so there's been a lot of new products that have come out in the bike world. This Frostbike from QBP especially. And there's a couple that I'd like to point out to you, Andrew, because, I'm the kind of guy that wants to point out new stuff in large bikes. And the first one, and it's the big guy that came out, was Surly's new fat bike. Now, this fat bike was called the Ice Cream Truck, and it is the most brilliant blue color in the world. I mean, it's just like vibrant. It's beautiful. But the thing that makes this thing different than their other products anyway is that this is Surly's first symmetrical fat bike. Normally how Surly has done things in the past is they've done like offset wheels with offset forks so that you can run a gear on your front wheel, so that, like, let's say your freewheel freezes up in the back, you can swap your front and your back wheel and you could run your bike as fixed.
Okay.
That's kind of how they plan the bike, so that's like even if you're like in big trouble, you can still get out of it.
Sure.
So that's how they planned it. But this is their first bike that's actually symmetrical. Like the framed one that I was talking about earlier and gushing over, that's symmetrical as well. So this is symmetrical on one as well, but it also has the same or similar geometry to their Krampus.
Yeah, sure.
And if you know the Krampus, you'll know that one's kind of like a in-between fat bike. That's the fat bike I can see you buying, Andrew.
No, I think if I'm going to get anything fat, it's going to be very fat.
No, well, I don't know, because the Krampus, the reason that one's so great is that it's a mountain bike, but a little bit fat. So instead of like running 4-inch tires, it runs 3-inch tires.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's really fun. I've ridden a Krampus as well, and it's great. It's not a fat bike, but it's close to a fat bike. but so the ice cream truck has a similar geometry. So what they're basically doing is they're almost taking like the geometry of the framed fat bike that I was talking before, like where you're more on top of the front wheel.
Mm-hmm.
They're putting it on a fat bike that has the 5-inch wide tires.
Right.
So they're basically taking like, hey, you want fat, but you want trail riding? Okay, we'll just give it to you all in one, and it's the ice cream truck.
It looks funny too because all the tubes are super skinny compared to other fat bikes. And
well, it's because they run them steel and not aluminum.
Right. Yeah.
So that's the reason they do that. The other thing is that Surly has kind of changed around their whole dropout system when it comes to their bikes now. Is that they used to do the track dropout system,
mm-hmm.
which was basically a horizontal drop, and then you could just like adjust the tension however you wanted it. Now they've kind of gone to like a standard dropout, which I've heard some people say like, well, I've heard some people say like, well, about time, and then other people like, oh, no, it's not as versatile anymore. I can't switch it to single speed. Whatever.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, I think that's a plus. I think that's great.
Right.
So
especially if you can't switch. I mean, it's not like you could switch to single speed. So, I mean, you could, but
well, you could because you buy a Problem Solver's tension tamer, and
sure.
There you go. You've tensioned your chain. You're good. Yep. Whatever. It's not a big deal, and especially also now that Surly is offering a Pugsley that comes single speed. So. There you go. If you really wanted a fat bike that's single speed, just buy it. Spend the $1,600, get your single speed Pugsley, be happy. The other things that they've had going on here is I'm not sure if you're familiar with Cogburn.
I am not.
Okay,
there's another. Though.
No, but it's another fat bike company that's owned by QVP, but it's actually aimed towards hunters.
Oh, I think I've seen like it's all camo and
they're like all camouflaged and stuff like that, and they come with like racks to like put your
gun on.
Like,
and like, I have seen this.
Now the thing is, I look at those and I kind of go like, oh, that's kitschy, but at the same time, like, you know what?
It's way better than a four-wheeler.
It's way better than a four-wheeler.
Yeah, that's the same thought I had too.
Yeah, you are going to get a large contingent of people that are like, oh man, I could totally sneak up on a deer that way.
Yeah.
And they will. That's the thing. It will be successful. So I'm just hoping, I actually hope if any of you who are listening to this podcast are actually know people who are avid hunters or, are into that yourself, look at these Cogburn bikes. I think they're actually brilliant.
Mm-hmm. No, I think so too. It'll be very interesting to see if they take off because there's sort of a let's get political here, but there's sort of hunting and gas-powered vehicles typically go hand in hand,
right?
And I've always sort of scoffed at the outdoorsman term because that usually means go out in the woods and destroy things. And that's not to say that I'm against hunting, but I'm more against gas-powered outdoor vehicles. And
right.
I mean, my grandpa has one, and that's great because he's not going to ride a bike.
He's also like 80-some years old, isn't he?
Exactly. So, right.
Yeah.
And but it would be very interesting if all of a sudden there became this new fat bike hunter contingent, because that actually is a group of people that I predict, I don't have data on this, but are not necessarily bike friendly.
Yeah. But I also see, though, that a lot of people who are looking at gas prices and things like that are going, you know what? I enjoy being outdoors. I want to ride and be in nature and hunt.
Right.
But necessarily have like the nature feeling. Like this would facilitate that. Now, the only negative I can see to this is that, okay, great, I shot a deer. Now what?
Yeah.
So that's the problem, is that you still end up like relying
on
some kind of
sort.
Way to get it out. But that's where Surly comes in with their Bob or Bill and Ted trailers. So
right.
There you go.
Right. And think of how many fat bikes you can put in the back of a Ford F-150 instead of four-wheelers,
That's right. You can put like 3 or 4 of them in there.
Exactly.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, I think people should take a look at those bikes. I think they're great. I'm going to suggest them to my cousin who actually works at a sporting goods place, because I think he should maybe review one for their magazine. So anyway, so there's been a lot of talk about fat bike carbon rims also.
I've seen some, yeah.
And I would like to say that's a great idea. Bring it on. there's some people like, oh, come on, fat bikes are supposed to be heavy, and I don't care. Like, that's fine. That's wonderful. Fat bikes can be heavy as soon as they make carbon rims standard. Like, awesome.
Right.
So,
right.
There you go.
I don't. And it's such a strange. They don't have to be heavy. Just because they are heavy now doesn't mean they have to be.
No, they don't have to be. In fact, the lighter that they are, and I don't have to work for it.
Right.
That's the best. Like, if you're actually going through and being like, okay, I can shave off 2 and 3 grams here and there,
then
like
that's stupid.
That's too far.
Exactly.
At that point, just go run a mile and then you're good.
Right.
If you can actually, shave off, 2 pounds on rotating weight, like, okay, great. That's wonderful. Like, I plan on doing that on my bike as soon as the tubes need replacing, because the tubes that are on there are way heavier than they need to be. So here's like the big news with fat bikes, though, as far as like the fattest of the fat of the most ridiculous of the ridiculous, is that 45 North has a bike tire, or a fat bike tire, called the Dillinger.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they did it last year, and it was a 4-inch wide studded fat bike tire. So this year they come out with a 5-inch wide with studs fat bike tire. I mean, the thing is just a beast. You look at it, and I mean, it will literally take you through any winter kind of terrain you can imagine. I would expect. This tire is like $240.
Wow.
For one tire. Man. Now, I have to say, I look at that and I go, no, absolutely not.
Yeah, exactly.
Even if I had like ridiculous amounts of money just to like throw away on things, I would be like, no, sorry, that is too far. I can't do that. That's absolutely ridiculous. But at the same time, that's kind of like 45 North's thing. Is like, hey, by the way, we have really great stuff that costs way too much. So, like, their pogies, I've used their pogies on a demo ride once, and my hands were sweating with no gloves. I mean, and it was like, okay, well, these things work really well. Fantastic. I'm not going to spend $120 on them. Right. They're really expensive.
Though I would buy those a million years before I spent $240 on a studded tire.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and a studded 5-inch wide tire. I have yet to actually discover, and I'm sure I will at some point in time, and I'll be saying this, but I have yet to discover the big difference between 4-inch and 5-inch as far as tires go on a fat bike. Because honestly, I have yet to find anything on a 4-inch tire that I couldn't ride. That I think a 5-inch. Oh man, 1 more inch and I could have ridden that. Like no, I'm pretty sure I couldn't have ridden it.
Right.
But that is just me.
Right.
There was one other piece of news I wanted to talk about, and it was QBP's new pedal that they just came out with, and it's let me find it here. I think it's called ISSI. ISSI. Since they dropped Shimano, or Shimano dropped them, or however you want to say that is, I guess, they've come up with a new pedal. And what it is, I don't know how to pronounce it. I want to say it's ISSI, ISSI, and it's just a standard like mountain bike pedal, SPD cleat, but it comes in all sorts of great colors.
Now, so do they come in orange, Kevin?
They do. High visibility orange, which is why I'm like, I totally need to get that. But no, honestly though, I look at it and like, they have pink ones. I'd get some pink ones for my road bike. That'd be great. But they have like, and the thing is, they're really reasonably priced, and they're chromoly spindles.
Holy crap! Those are cheap.
Yeah, and they're not bad. They're like a good pedal. SPD cleat. I mean, it's a great pedal. Like, if you need to buy some pedals, like, I don't want to spend $1,000 on pedals, or I need clipless pedals for my bike, blah, and I want them to look good because it's my commuter or something like that.
Sure.
Okay, these look great. So, and especially all the different colors. And honestly, I couldn't have cared about colors maybe like a year ago, but now I care. So now I'm like, oh man, pink pedals. That's actually pretty great. Like Leisha would love that on her bike. Pink pedals. Like she'd be like, yeah. So yeah, that's
I
great.
might have to show my wife these. Although I'm pretty confident we're gonna get her speed plays, but we'll see. We'll see.
Speedies are pretty easy to use and they're cheap. So
are speed plays. I mean, no, they're not cheap.
Well, I mean, they're all
easy
to use. Yes. I mean, like they're cheap. So, but yeah.
But the colors,
so I thought
the
that
colors
was,
might change your minds. I don't know. We'll see.
Well, see that's the thing. It's like you just got to make it visually interesting, and all of a sudden you want a bike. So. But anyway, I thought those were a very interesting thing that QBP added at Frostbike this year. I thought that was pretty cool. Because I would actually think about getting some for my single speed, switching out the silvers for some orange. So there we go. Yeah. So I have been talking for a long time.
Well, that's good though, because I mean, there will come a time in future podcasts where I'll go on and on about the differences between Strava and Map My Ride and stuff like that, and then it'll just be me pontificating. So
Well, that'd be good. That'd be wonderful. But yeah, I would actually say, like, as far as like this winter has gone, as far as March, or not even March yet, February goes, it's been a really good winter for biking, Andrew. I mean, we've had like really good snow conditions to learn how to bike in snow.
Agreed. Yeah.
I wouldn't say that we've had the warmest conditions.
No, well, we've also had really good frigid temperatures to learn how to dress and not dress. So.
Absolutely. I mean, I have. Today I went out. It was -2. Went out riding for an hour, and I was wearing just boots, a pair of wool socks, long underwear, a pair of like nylon cargo pants over that, which those ended up getting way cold. I should have worn something else. But then just a long sleeve wool undershirt, t-shirt, vest, and a stocking cap, and I was fine. And that was actually about the right temperature because I wasn't sweating too much. So that was pretty good. But just as a little bit of humor in this, so I actually discovered that when I got back in the house, I was like admiring my ice beard, and and I looked at my hat, and I'm like, what the? And I can actually see like patterns of where I'm balding on my stocking hat, because you'd look at it.
There's
and
more
it would be,
condensation there.
Well, you'd be like there's frost at certain points, and be like, that's where the hair is. And like anywhere that there wasn't frost, I'm like, that's where the hair is going. So it was interesting. It was like you could see into the future.
Right.
Like there's the inland lake. There's the peninsula. Yeah. Oh, I have a fjord on the right coming. So.
That's pretty good.
Yep. And that's how I 2:00 today I had a small crisis, and then I got over it and took a nap.
And see, one of the things I've learned too this winter is, since I'm living with my in-laws, since we're currently shopping for houses and trying to sell the place that's currently my very echoey studio, is I've had to be, you think winter is a good time for trainer riding, which is true, except for I'm basically riding the trainer outside in the garage. So when it's 5 degrees out, I'm riding the trainer in 5-degree weather. So one might question why I don't just go out and ride the trails, but,
wind chill. That's why.
Wind chill, exactly. And truth be told, when it's 5 degrees out, I'm in a closed garage, and I start with, bike shorts, an undershirt, jersey, maybe some, sort of pant kind of thing, and a light coat. And after 10 minutes of riding, I'm ready to take off basically everything because I'm hot and that sort of stuff.
Just about naked, yeah.
But even in those conditions, I still get cold feet. So 5 degrees on the trainer, and I get cold feet.
I'm actually pretty sure that the first product that I really want to, the second product I want to do next year anyway. The first product we're going to do next, though, by the way, Andrew, I just need to, I have some Ergon grips coming from my fat bike. So we'll check those out. Ergon grips, apparently they're like the panacea of hand problems on bike. So we'll see if that's true. But next winter for sure, I'll tell you this is what we're doing, is that I am going to buy some Hottronics foot warmers, and we'll see if those things
Are those
solve
the
problem.
insoles?
Yep.
Okay.
The heated insoles that have a battery pack that lasts 8 to 12 hours or something like that.
Sure.
And we'll see if that is the solution, because according to all the reviews, that's the way to do it.
Huh.
So.
Well, and we'll see, because when I did my February Century, I said, okay, that's it, I'm done. The hard stuff's over. But the way it's looking right now, March could be hard as well. And if that's the case, I'm going to go out and spring for some of those Zippo catalytic heating things, which will fit nicely in my my Neo overshoe, Gore-Tex overshoe sorts of things. And if that's the case, not ideal for obviously like a lake boot sort of thing, but if you're doing like a hiking boot with an overshoe, these little Zippo heating elements, perfect, because they last about 8 to 12 hours off a single lighter fluid charge, and you can just fill them right back up. So, well, apparently the polar vortex is going to be in this area until the second week of March. So sweet.
There you go. We'll see how it goes. I plan on getting not a Century, but a long ride in on the fat bike before then. But Andrew, the one thing we should mention before we leave tonight is actually March 1st is the start of
good point.
30 days of biking. Oh my God, 30 days of biking.
March 1st or April 1st?
Well, March 1st is when you can register.
Oh, okay. I was like, wait a minute.
April 1st. April 1st is the beginning, but March 1st is when you register for 30 days of biking.
Good point. So, you introduced me to 30 Days of Biking, which last year I referred to as 30 Days of Not Biking, because I signed up.
I did it, man.
And I had a very hard time. But also, this is before life-changing events and that kind of stuff. So. Yeah. This year I'm going to be.
Before I shamed you into biking.
Exactly. This year it'll be much easier for me to do 30 days of biking, because I've not done it this week, but most weeks I'm riding almost every day.
Pretty much.
Well, not every day. It's 5 days a week at least. So I'm really looking forward to it. But so for those of you who don't know, 30 Days of Biking is a what do we call it? An organization, a group, a thing. It's a thing.
It's a thing, yeah.
Yeah, it's a thing where you sign up and you pledge that you're going to ride every single day for 30 days in April. It's that simple. You just got to get on your bike, you got to ride, and it doesn't matter how far, how long, where, who you're with, what you're wearing. You could wear nothing. Last
April was incredibly rainy in Minnesota, and there were days where I would literally do twice around the block back in the garage, and okay, that's enough. But I rode my bike every day for 30 days, and I would actually have to say it was fantastic. It was wonderful. I was in such good shape at the end of it, so it was wonderful.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, because it's things like this. We talked about this in the first episode. Things like the Tour of Sufferlandria, where you just need a reason. I mean, getting on your bike is a reason enough. But sometimes, especially this winter, you need something to kind of kick you, to kind of, it can be as simple as I signed up for a make-believe tour in a make-believe country, and I have to do it every single day for 9 days, no matter what. Or it can be I signed up to do 30 days of riding, every single day in April. And
no one's going to know if I did it, but I signed up to do it.
Exactly. And if you're like me and if you're like Kevin, those sorts of things really drive me to kind of fulfill what I've said I was going to do. And particularly what I'm really excited about is now that I'm in, the city of 30 Days of Biking, there's a lot of local rides here that are going on. So if you do live in the Twin Cities or at least nearby, what's the webpage? I forgot to look this up.
30 Days of Biking.
30daysofbiking.com. Check it out, because I think they will have posted there some sort of group rides schedules.
There are a group ride at the beginning. There's a group ride at the end. There's big parties. There's
I think the Flesh
every
is going to be
Saturday,
an official ride.
The Flesh,
So, yeah. Well, if you want to get up really freaking early. But there's tasty breakfast at the end.
Early. Come on.
It's early.
It's not early.
But yeah, if you're going to participate, let us know, because we'll be doing it, and we can even have our own group rides. And in fact, I think what we'll be doing is, we're normally doing, we're trying to do about 2 podcasts a month, but I think during 30 Days of Biking, we're going to do one podcast a week.
Absolutely.
To sort of have our 30 Days of Biking stories, and who knows, by that time maybe we'll have some guests on to talk about 30 Days of Biking and what they're up to. So,
absolutely. And 30 Days of Biking is a wonderful thing. I mean, last year when I did it, I was doing it pretty much solo because no one else that I knew around here was doing it, but it was very fun. I had a great time doing it, just reading what other people were doing on the blogs, and it was very inspiring. And also it got me in shape for the Almanza 100, which the Almanza 100 is the May 16th, 17th, 18th this year, if you're doing the Alexander anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a great way to get in shape for any early season rides you're doing. That's if you need more incentive other than just to do it, that's a good incentive. But yeah, I would encourage everyone to go check out 30 Days of Biking. Sign up on March 1st. There's always a big drive to be the first 10 people or whatever to sign up for the year. I think last year I was like somewhere in like 15 or something like that. It's always very easy for me to sign up because it's my birthday, and so I'm like, I'm awake. I'm never first, but yeah.
Oh, and just to, I mean, Google is your friend, but it's the number 30daysofbiking.com.
Yes,
so.
yes. Yeah. They have a great logo too, by the way. And
Can you explain to me the logo? I do not understand it. I've wondered this for quite
It's apparently like if you are a I don't want to say bike noob, but if you are a person who bikes and gets like the chain grease on your leg, apparently it can make that type of shape. I've never seen that on my leg. It's always just been a smear, but that's,
or a chain shape.
Yeah. So apparently that's the. I thought that's what, or I heard somewhere or read somewhere.
I've someday we'll talk to Patrick Stevenson and then we'll.
Well, I think it makes sense because I mean it's XXX, so that's 30, and then it could be chains, and so I.
I've worried about this for quite some time, so it's like I don't get it.
Thing is, he has a backpack with that on it, and I'm like, I want your backpack. Just so I can be like, you're that guy, and I'm like, yes, I am. yes, I am. Yeah. You can send me your bourbon. Yeah.
Sending bourbon is always, a polite thing to do, really. So
it is good because honestly, like, there is no way you can send a disease through bourbon. So
probably true.
I hope it's true. If it's not true, we've got a problem. This is turning into Super Number One other way.
Exactly. Super Number One Prime, yeah.
Prime. I like that. It makes it sound classier.
Yeah.
Super Number One Prime.
Except for that means it's like the derivative. But it's
okay.
Anyway.
Whatever.
So I guess we should finish this off. If you want to get a hold of us, you can contact us at supernumber1cast@gmail.com. The show Twitter is supernumber1. Simple. And you can get a hold of me on Twitter. I'm the Nth Andrew, and Kevin is the 4Tree. Indeed. It's quite simple. And you'll find that we do most of our tweeting on our personal accounts, but ping us at the show page too if you want.
I do look at it occasionally. Andrew does occasionally too. We like
it makes my pocket vibrate when you send something to me, so I will notice. I will notice and enjoy. We also have a Facebook page. We use it kind of like our Twitter page, mainly for announcements. But please, we love feedback. So any way you want to get a hold of us, we're happy to talk and engage.
And like honestly, if you guys want to get a hold of us in a more what's the word, Andrew? I can't get it. It's like not real time. That's not the word. But I want to say interpretive, but that's not right either. It's man, I'm just like hand. If you want to get a hold of us in a way that like we can respond to you, please let us know.
Yes.
Like send us an email and say like, hey, I would like to see a blog of you guys, or like, like,
I see what you're getting at.
Yeah, like just let us know that, and then we can make that happen maybe.
Right.
So we're just very interested to hear what you guys want out of this podcast and out of this media thing that we're doing. So
yeah,
there you go.
Future topics, more ways for us to ramble on about nothing, but nothing related to bikes, of course. We're happy to discuss that because this is kind of what we do, you know. I mean, we just talk about things, and sometimes we record it, and you know.
I want to talk about wide tires. They're the best. I mean,
he likes wide tires, and he cannot lie.
I cannot lie, and
those
I would not.
Other
lie.
Others can't deny. When those rims wheel roll in, and the and a bit. Yeah, I don't know.
Fat. Yeah,
and
go fat.
That's a cut.
That's what I like.
That works.
Oh man, I mean, I'm not even lying. Fat tires, dude. Oh, so good.
I do need to ride one beyond my riding around Omnium.
Yeah, that's
slowly.
not. You need to actually take it